The Nigeria Data Protection Commission has announced a massive enforcement and imposition of substantial fines on data controllers and processors that violate the Nigeria Data Protection Act. This was disclosed by the National Commission and CEO of the Commission, Dr. Vincent Olatuji, in a video outlining the Commissioner's 2024 agenda shared on its social media platforms at the weekend. Of course, Olatuji said for data controllers and processors, there is going to be massive enforcement in the new year. And this was disclosed by him, and he says that for data controller and processors, there's going to be massive enforcement. The NDPC boss assured Nigerians that the data right is guaranteed by the full protection of what the Commission is doing, and that the 14 data controllers and processors will face strict consequences. Let's quickly have this conversation on the Nigeria Data Protection Commission's plan to embark on massive enforcement and imposition of substantial fines on data controllers and processors that violate the Nigeria Data Protection Act. Joining us in the studio is Arise News analyst Frank Tietie, and of course he's also a lawyer as well. Welcome to News Night. Well, thank you for joining us. I mean, what does this signal about the government's seriousness in addressing data protection and privacy concerns in the country? I mean, because this is coming from the Commission itself to embark on massive enforcement in the new year, especially on those who have been violating the Nigeria Data Protection Act.
Okay, I think it's a welcome development. Whether or not the Commission has done enough substantial information, sensitization of the public with regards to the existence of data protection mechanisms in this country is a different thing. But I also think that it's coming quite late, because much of the damage has been done over the years because much of our data have not actually been protected against, especially social media companies. I'm talking about Facebook, WhatsApp, and the rest of them, especially Google. They've exploited much of the unprotected environment. And in this case, talking about the data collectors and processors, it's important. But it also should start with government, because government agencies are the ones that have primarily collected much of the data. Now, because we are approaching, or rather we live in a new economy where data is actually king, where data is the real currency, especially in determining the consumer behavior, one would have expected that the abuse of data should have been arrested much earlier than now. But I am a bit troubled to think that I've been struggling, talking with a researcher, a junior colleague who's a researcher in this business, to find out that let's see whether the NDPC, the Commission, does possess that kind of capacity to track the abuse of data independently. I find that quite difficult. So it means that if individual Nigerians don't complain about the abuse of data, like a colleague of mine, did against MTN, where the court fined MTN for unnecessarily abusing his phone number by sending unsolicited messages. So it has to be a person who is offended by the abuse of such data that can complain to the Commission before the Commission can exercise such enforcement mechanism. I want to see a situation where the Commission is able to, on its own independent initiative, determine the abuse of data by collectors, by processors, and by social media companies that have actually been violating the rights of Nigerians.
I think we also need to look at the bigger picture, which of course is about different agencies who have been collecting data, in charge of data collections. You have the NIMC there, and you have other sister agencies who have been doing all of the data collection. The concern, therefore, is that there is duplication, duplicity of agencies of things. So the question will now be, how do you think this can be addressed? Because in other climes, data is gold.
Though it is in our climate as well. in these days where you have phones that have listening capacities, capabilities, I would say, and you know, where internet service providers and phone companies are able to sell your data without your consent to marketers who use such analysis, data analysis, to determine consumer behavior, and it happens every day, all the time, and which means, you know, in this new economy, as it has been, you know, exposed, that we who look at our phones are actually those being traded with. So consent matters a lot in the way you use people's data. But you raised a very important issue, which is multiplicity of agencies doing the same thing. One would have actually thought that the Nigerian Communications Commission could have simply had a department of consumer protection to deal with data protection rather than establishing a whole commission. But I think the world is moving to a trend where you have this strong devotion to data protection because of the seriousness, despite the fact that there also exists the Cyber Crimes Protection, the Cyber Crimes Act, you know.
Right.
So one would have thought that this unnecessary duplication. However, it's okay that we now have a commission that presents itself that it's on the side of the people to protect against the people. But you see, a good example, rather than the commission coming out to announce that it's coming after data collectors who are abusing or violating privacy or digital rights, I think they should have used some persons as scapegoats, as examples. You need to see the way loan sharks are terrorizing Nigerians. Many Nigerians who are very helpless. I mean, they just collect because they wanted to collect. I mean, they give online loans, and then somehow they collect pieces of data from Nigerians. And then when there is a slight default of a few days, you see them publishing the pictures of these persons, their names all over in social media, in Facebook and all that. I haven't seen any kind of traumatizing violation of privacy rights. But I haven't seen whether the Federal Consumer Consumer Protection Council hasn't done anything about that, or Commission, I would say, hasn't done anything about that. And then that would have been a very potent opportunity for the NDPC to do something.
You raise very important, point, which is about the NCC now has a commission, separate agency to having to deal with data.
No, it's an act of the National Assembly. It's a commission established by law, independent.
So is it okay now? Is it appropriate to now say, okay, let's review other agencies who are also in the business of data collection, like the NIPSI,
of course, yes,
and all of that?
Of course, yes. The NDPC, does have the powers to make regulations and make prescriptions as to how data is collected, processed, and used. And in this case, it has enforcement, provisions in its law that it can actually move against, those who are abusing data. Problem is, I repeat, is that would it be able to independently determine those violations? Would it have to wait for persons who feel aggrieved, like Barrister Anene, who had to take MTN to court to say, look, don't send me too many messages when I didn't ask for them?
Because I asked that question because we need to, follow up in terms of accountability. We now know that there's a commission in charge of data in Nigeria, and so we don't have all of the other agencies. Perhaps we need to say, okay, let's scrap them out.
The FCCPC can handle such complaints of data rights violation, but principally is the NDPC in this case, and it is on the right course when it says it's putting the public on notice. Right. However, this is very important. Individuals can on their own move against any data collector that has actually, abused this data. And it is a big problem because we're talking about we're in an economy where everybody now has phone. Your phone listens to you. Your browser, takes record of, tracks you and does everything, and then sells your data to a manufacturing company that analyzes and knows what your needs are, and it sells to you. So all this kind of, without your consent, all of this done in the background. So I would have really appreciated a situation where the commission is able to assure Nigerians that all of that will stop now, and that you are able to also withdraw your consent if at all you're giving it. And the violations, and then we also should, import standardization. So there's this talk about pseudonymization and anonymization. So such data that are collected, you don't have to say this data belongs to Frank Tietie and put them right there so that any person can use them. You can actually recode, encode, and encrypt such data in a manner that will protect Nigerians. So we want to see more. So the enforcement shouldn't really be predicated on the presumption that there will be a violation, but no, it should be on the fact that there should be some protection first.
You know, enforcement on this scale, you know, comes with challenges in terms of identifying, you know, violations and, I mean, ensure due process as well. So what hurdles do you see or foresee for the NDPC in countering as they roll out these heavy penalties?
No, because first they know that there's widespread violation already, and then there's a lot of ignorance. Many Nigerians are unaware that their rights are being constantly,
so that's where,
daily
you know,
violated.
awareness.
So I would have thought that the sensitization would have been, they would have still increased the sensitization. The act was just enacted last year, and one would have thought that they would have done more. Look, you see. For example, look at the bombardments that Nigerians receive from their service providers, from their phone companies, all the time. These are all violation of rights. Because if I didn't give you my number, why would I be browsing something on Google Chrome, and then the next thing I turn to Facebook, they are telling me, they're advertising the same thing I was browsing, which means they are following everything I'm doing. And then they're also listening. The way we are talking, this phone is here, is listening, and then it's supplying the data. So the data protection has become more advanced than the mere, calling on Nigerians to respect it. But I think the NDPC should rise to that point where it goes after those persons who have the strong likelihood, and I'm about talking about big tech companies, especially those who are outside this country, because there are provisions in the Act that the questions have been raised, that how much do they protect children? Why would Section 31, give some kind of, excuse that children of 13 years of age can provide data? What we should have in the age of child pornography and all of those things, we should have greater protection for our children. And then let's see that transnational protection. What about Nigerians abroad? How are they using it? What about big tech companies that have their company headquarters in Silicon Valley doing a lot of damage right here in Nigeria? So we need a lot more in terms of this enforcement beyond the shores of Nigeria.
Indeed, let's keep an eye on this massive enforcement and see how that goes. Thank you so much for your time, Frank Tietie, a lawyer and a rights analyst.
My pleasure.
Thank you for coming on the news.
Cheers.